All right, a very special edition of the Warrior's Voice tonight. It's actually midnight, a little after midnight. We're out here at OPFOB doing day one of the 22 nights of lighting the fire. And sitting next to me is not only a brother in arms, but also becoming a very good friend of mine. It's a gentleman that has been out here sharing stories with us, and it's Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry. And Sergeant First Class, just thank you so much for actually being out here at OPFOB and inspiring so many people.
Not that I care, but I got promoted to Master Sergeant.
Master Sergeant, oh, excuse me.
I don't care anymore. It's just Leroy now.
Leroy, all right, that's even better. So Leroy, tell us a little bit about your background and where you grew up and kind of what some of your hopes and dreams were when you were a younger buck.
I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was the youngest of three boys for about 13 years, and then my parents had another one, and my mom had her tubes tied and miraculously had another one. And so I ended up being the middle of five boys. And back then, no Xbox, internet, all that other stuff.
So we actually played kick the can and
oh no, we were
tag
roughhousing, playing army, wrestling, going outdoors, and enjoying life. We were out in sticks at one place we lived, and sometimes I just take the broom handle and go smack the cactus and knock them around. And one of us was always getting hurt when we were doing that. Cactus baseball is what we called it. And I smacked this branch off the cactus, and it stuck into my brother's shin.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't know how my parents survived. One of us was always getting stitches or staples or bleeding out of somewhere.
So Arizona, tell me about high school. You playing any sports? Santa Fe, sorry.
New Mexico.
New Mexico, yes. Better.
I played football when I was young, and I don't know if I shared this publicly, but it was called YAFL, the Young American Football League, and it's grade school, elementary, and I was a runt, and I actually had a nickname that the coaches, my dad was one of the coaches, and another one of his friends, and they gave me a nickname, and I'll never forget it. They called me Powder Puff.
Powder Puff.
I guess I didn't really understand it, but they finally explained it to me. It's kind of like, I guess, the women for their
Powder Puff.
The little thing they put the powder on with is called Powder Puff, and they said that's how I hit. And so they're trying to get some anger in me and try to get me to hit harder. And so, come on, Powder Puff, hit him. And it worked. Ended up being like the water boy.
All right, so tell us how Powder Puff got into the Army then.
I was probably about 7 or 8 at the time, and my mom's cousin was deployed to Desert Storm Shield at the time, I think. And back then they'd roll in the cart with the tube television in school for history, part of the class.
That's when you know it was a good day, when the cart comes in there, because then the teacher wasn't going to talk. You can watch movies.
Well, we watched the news, and so we would keep current on what's going on in our communities and what's going on in the world. And I still really started asking the questions at that point of why is he going across the world to risk his life for people we don't even know? And I started to get some of the answers that he wasn't doing it just for them, he was doing it for us here at home as well. And I said, that's awesome. I said, that's a soldier. I said, he's doing it for us and for people he's never met. And I realized I was blessed to live in this country, and I said, I want to do that one day. I want to be able to stand up and serve my country, whether it's peacetime or war. I want to stand guard and give that back to the next generation after me.
And that's such a warrior trait, is putting the mission above the individual, is having a greater cause and something bigger than all of us. So that's great.
But didn't make good choices. As I was getting in high school, I started hanging around with kids that bad influences, having me make bad decisions. I was getting in a lot of fights. I was getting suspended. from school. I was a dirtbag, and I got home one night, or one day, and parents would get home long after we were home from school and gone to work before we'd go to school, and did the best they could to give us the best life they could. And I opened the mailbox, report card, before it was digital time, and
Intercept before mom and dad.
oh yeah, find out what kind of whipping or chewing you were gonna get. And I open up the report card and I see my name at the top, Leroy Petry, student ID, and then I look down, F, 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 D, F. And I kind of froze. I looked up and down the street, and it was a quiet day, nobody was out. And I kind of thought about it for a second. I said, my dreams of joining the Army they won't even take me with this. And I said, if anybody gets that piece of paper, they're gonna think that's who I am, that I'm a failure, that I don't even try. And I think the D was in bakery, and so I didn't even show up for snacks well. But at that point, I had an epiphany, whatever you want to call it. I realized I was letting everybody down. I was letting my parents down, who were doing their best to give us a good life. I was letting my teachers down, who were doing their best to educate us. I was letting everybody down. I said, that's not who I am. And if somebody gets that piece of paper and I'm not there to prove them any different, that's all they're going to have to go off of. And I said, that's not who I want to be. And so I made a conscious decision at that point. I stopped hanging around with the bad influences, started surrounding myself with people that positively influenced me. I started asking questions, asking for help if there was things I didn't understand or I needed help with. And I ended up getting away from those guys that I was hanging around with. And I ended up making straight A's the rest of my high school time. And I look back on it now, and one of those guys that I hung around with quite a bit, I think he's got 3 or 4 DUIs, 4 or 5 kids except for 2, all of them are from different women. And he's a barber at the mall. I said, Jesus, I almost became that guy.
Yeah, I think you always regress to the mean, as they say in statistics. If you hang around people that are better than you, you're going to get better. If you hang around people that are, you know what, you're going to be like that too.
Absolutely. You're judged by the people you hang around with.
Absolutely. So you really articulated one of the biggest things I see in the warrior story, and that is you had your crucible. You got to that point where the abyss was going to consume you if you stared long enough into it. You looked at that report card and said, this isn't me, but you had to transform and make a change, because without making a transformational change and conquering what got you there, the warrior will always go right back to that abyss. So you made that change. Great grades, decide, okay, time to join the Army. Talk us through that process now.
Well, after I got the great grades, the Chamber of Commerce put me in for an award, and I told my parents, I'm getting some award, I don't know what it is. Just gotta go to some dinner. And we go there, and they're explaining about this award. It's called the Bootstrap Award. And they're explaining that the military used to have straps on their boots, and that's what they used to pull them up on their feet. And I said, that's perfect. I want to go to the Army. My grandfather, though, he wanted me to go to college. And so we went to a nearby college, and I agreed to go check it out. And next thing I know, we're sitting at this desk, and he's writing a check to help with the tuition.
You're like, wait a second.
And I'm like, I don't want to tell Grandpa no. And so I ended up going for half a semester, or a semester, and I'm back home, and my dad says, hey, didn't school start up again last week? I said, yeah, but I leave to the military on Wednesday, which was like 2 days later, and that's how I broke the news to my family that I joined. And my older brother was in the military for 4 years. He was getting out right as I was going in. And he said, don't do it, don't do it. And I said, why not? I said, I forget what his job was, but he didn't like it. He let the recruiter pick for him, and I said, I'm going to pick what I want to do. And I loved it.
And what was your original MOS? What were you doing?
Originally, I wanted to join almost joined as a cook. But I realized they don't become chefs for several years. So I was like, I'll be a ranger, I could do that right away. And I enlisted as an 11 Bravo X-ray, which is 11 Bravo needs in the Army. So you could be either a mortar guy or an infantry guy. And then I joined with the Ranger option. So if you pass airborne and basic, then you get to go to selection.
For our listeners that aren't familiar with us, tell us about the Rangers.
Oh, wow. The Rangers, great lineage of historical, different points in our military. They're considered special operations, the elite of the infantry, and my cousin was in the Rangers at the time, and he kind of told me more about them, and that's when I decided that's what I want to do, because they not only volunteer for the military, but they volunteer for airborne school, they volunteer for selection, Ranger Assessment and Selection Program now it's called, and then they volunteer for demolition school. So they multiple times they keep volunteering, and they're dedicated. And I said, at that time we weren't at war, and I said, if war were to come out while I was serving, I want to be with the best. And that was my reason for joining them. And historically, I mean, the Rangers of World War II, scaling the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc, the Greatest Raid, Korean War, and then you look at Mogadishu, the Rangers out there. Rangers have always stood out, but they've always been the quiet professionals. And unless something went wrong or extremely great, you didn't really hear about them.
So he's being very modest. The Rangers are straight up badasses. And their Ranger selection, the school you go through, is one of the toughest survivals schools that I've heard of. I mean, you guys are basically just thrown out in the swamp and tell you to...
It's a leadership school. People that are in the Ranger Regiment that wear the Ranger scroll, it's one of the requirements is that you have to go to Ranger school and get your Ranger tab. And I went as a young PFC, and Ranger Regiment, that was like a break for me, going to Ranger school. I said, this is not even half as hard as Ranger Regiment. And so it was challenging, but...
So as tough as the school is, it's tougher when you get
It's tougher in the unit. And a lot of the Rangers in regiment will say, the tab's just a school, the Ranger Regiment is a job.
And there's so high regard for the Ranger tab that in the Marine Corps, the only patch a Marine is allowed to wear is a Ranger tab. They're not allowed to wear any other patches. We have our Eagle Globe and Anchor, you have your maybe scuba bubble or your jump wings, and that's it, but you are allowed to wear the Ranger tab for Marines.
I had a couple Marines in my class.
Very cool.
And then that's the thing I love is that they open it up to the branches. But it is a difficult school to get into. There's not a lot of slots, and the attrition rates
Pretty high. Yeah. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. You end up serving a couple tours overseas, is that right?
2 in Iraq and 6 in Afghanistan.
Oh my gosh, gotcha.
It sounds like a lot, and when I tell people that, they're like, oh my God. And I said, our deployments were shorter, but our up-tempo was higher. We were constantly going out and engaging, and a lot of times when the targets we had to go after were higher value and usually had the better protection force with them, and those ones were dedicated and usually fight to the death. And I ran into one of my buddies, 2016 I think it was, and I tell folks if I had stayed on par and was still serving like them, I hadn't seen him in a number of years, and ran into him in Afghanistan. I said, hey, what's new? Girlfriend, kids, wife? And he said, Leroy, I'm on trip number 23. They want me back here next year, I'll be on 24. And I was looking at him going, man, thank God there's people like you that are willing to continue to dedicate their lives.
What drives someone like you to be willing to be deployed that much? What are you doing this for?
I started doing, when we started deploying, I was coming toward the end of my initial enlistment, and my wife said, all right, you're done enough deployments, you just need to stay home and let somebody else do it. I got to see the difference that we were making on the ground. The schools that were being built, the women in Afghanistan, young girls that were going to school.
It's the why.
Oh yeah, all the people that come up and say how grateful they were that we were there, and I got to see a lot of positive change. So I came home on my birthday, and I opened the door, and my wife was, "Hey, happy birthday!" And I said, "Honey, I just re-enlisted for 6 years today." And the smile kind of went down a little bit, but she realized. She said, I trust you, and you always make good decisions. If that's really what you want to do, we'll support you."
That's great. So the vast majority of Warrior Voice listeners are listening. They can't see both of us right now, but would you mind telling those who can't see what's around your neck right now?
It's the it's the Medal of Honor. It's the highest award that a military service member can receive. It's normally presented by the President of the United States, and it's 3 different medals. Each branch has their own medal: Air Force, Marines, and Navy, and then the Army. And I wear the Army Medal of Honor, and it's a blue ribbon with 13 stars to represent the 13 colonies. And then below that is the eagle, which a lot of people don't know this about the eagle, is that there's 2 places you'll see the eagle where the head is pointed in the same direction as the arrows. And the Medal of Honor and the Secretary of Defense's flag. And colonels during World War II used to have the eagles that would face with the arrows, and the difference was it's a war eagle. And most times you'll see the eagle anywhere else, it'll have its head facing toward the olive branch. But in the middle, it's a 5-pointed star, and people ask why it's canted like that, and it's the only way they could figure out to hang it from the little bar above it that says Valor. And in the middle is Minerva, and then it's got oak leaves, green oak leaves around it. It's a lightweight piece of metal, but I tell people, to me, it represents all the people who have served, those who are serving, and especially those that paid the ultimate sacrifice. But it's more than just a ribbon and a medal. It's more of a symbol that any of us is capable of great things. The president at the ceremony, he said, "Our heroes are all around us." And what I tell people, I interpreted that as is that you don't need to be given accolades, you don't need to be recognized on a stage, or sometimes even acknowledged to be a hero to somebody. It could be as simple as listening to their problems when they're having a hard day, or helping them out with something that they're struggling with.
It's very deep. Would you mind sharing us the story on that day?
Sure. We got notified, all the special operations that were in Afghanistan, so Rangers, SEALs, Special Forces, all that, they had picked up chatter that a high-value target was operating and moving around in Afghanistan. They hadn't pinpointed where, but they stood down everybody, because they said when he pops up on the grid, whoever's closest to this individual is going to action on it. And so Rangers typically operate during night, so we got the cover of darkness, and like to catch people in their beds when they're sleeping. And the plan is always to try to capture, because dead terrorists don't talk. And so if you can catch one that shares with you their intentions, their plans, and all their other buddies, and that's always a better idea. But during the night, we also have the cover of darkness. We have our lasers, our night vision, that gives us a little bit of an upper hand. And this was different. Normally during the daytime, we'd go out and we'd rest, we'd go to the gym, do our mail, whatever things we needed to do. And it was early morning. I walked into our operations tent, and there was one other person in there, the officer on guard. He's across the room behind his laptop, and I went in there to check my email, and all of a sudden he jumps up from behind his computer and he says, "Hey, Leroy, go wake up the pilots." Didn't even ask him what was going on, just got it. I knew something was going on, so I ran over to the pilots and I woke them up, and then I ran to my squad's room and I woke up my guys. I said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but check your gear, start getting ready. And walked back in, and that's when I found out that we were planning to action on this target, and did some quick planning with the leaders. I ended up going by our chow hall tent, and we had got stuck out a little bit longer than expected a couple days before. And so the younger junior rangers, when they find out you're stuck out longer than you're supposed to be, they get kind of poopy. And my idea was I go in there and I grab what we call lickies and chewies, little bags of beef jerky or something, and shove them in my cargo pocket. So if something happens, I could just chuck it to them and boost their morale.
It's like the Snickers bar. The grumpy guy, get the Snicker, and all of a sudden you're better.
And so as I'm in this tent, I'm looking around, and things decorated like the 4th of July. And like I said, our up-tempo was really high on that deployment, most of our deployments, but I can't figure it out. I'm like, man, we've only been here like a month and a half. Why is it red, white, and blue everywhere? And it wasn't until I got down to the end of the table, I see a sheet cake, and it says Happy Memorial Day. And I was like, man, it's already Memorial Day, and time flies when you're busy. So I stopped for a moment, paused for a moment of silence, paid my respects, and then I ran out to check my gear. And the next thing we know, we're loading up on Chinook helicopters, and we're flying out to the objective during a daylight raid. And I think everybody was a little bit nervous. Historically, daylight raids against better trained enemies, they're willing to fight to the death. You're more on an somewhat even playing field, and they're going to hear us miles coming out with the helicopters. And historically, we've taken casualties. And so while we're in the helicopter, I'm going through all the planning, phase lines, and contingencies, and what I'd do if someone were to get hurt. Never did I think I'd be one of those people, but when you're young, you think you're bulletproof. They give you this body armor and guns, and I'm invincible. I joke with folks and I tell them, unless the enemy was using kryptonite that day, I was no Superman. But as we come out to this rural area where it looks like farmland, there's little terraces in the farm and the fields, and random compounds and structures here and there, kind of an adobe type of mud structures. And as soon as we drop that ramp, the Chinook, we're taking fire. Guy in the field shooting at us, and politically correct term, we neutralize the threat. And as platoon leader and I are clearing the individual, we hear over the radio one of our younger rangers went into the wrong compound, and he was already fixing it and going into the right one. And so I told my platoon leader, I'm going to break off. I'm going to go with those guys, provide overwatch and guidance. And he said, all right, go for it. And I caught up to them as they had already breached the wall. It was about a 20-foot wall compound. And they committed, and as they went inside, they went directly across the compound, and there's almost a 2-story looking structure in the back corner, and they started clearing that. Well, since I was the last guy, as they got inside, I stayed in the doorway, and I was pulling security in the courtyard and on the adjacent smaller building next to it. And I kept yelling, give me a guy, we need to clear this courtyard, we need to clear based off the imagery and what we saw, we labeled it as we called it a chicken coop. Just because of its size in comparison to the other building. People always, was it really a chicken coop? I was like, no, there was no chickens in there.
It was just smaller.
Yeah, it was just small. And so I got a tap on my shoulder. I didn't even look because I knew I had somebody with me. I kept my focus on direction of movement. As we started to move, 2 guys popped up to our left, probably 15 feet away, 20 feet away, tops, just spraying AK-47s from the hip. And I got hit in my left thigh, and I'd never been shot. It felt like a sledgehammer. Just somebody hitting you in the side of your thigh. And you watch hunting shows, you see a deer getting hit mid-stride. It was kind of like that, where you kind of buck, step for a minute, and in my mind, I'm thinking, get the hell out of the rain of fire before you catch another round. So I ran, got behind that small chicken coop, and PFC Robinson, who was behind me, got hit just below his left armpit, and he followed me and got behind the building. I told him immediately, hey, start watching that corner. I was watching my corner, and my biggest fear was they were going to come around the corners and finish us off while we're injured. And so they were still getting shot at from on the sides, and I prepped a thermal barrack grenade and I threw it over the building, and as it went off, it kind of bought us a lull in fire. At that point, another Ranger, Sergeant Higgins, comes running over, and immediately I said, hey, help Robinson, watch that corner. I started watching my corner. I'm on the radio.
So you've got a bullet in your leg, your buddy's got a bullet in his armpit, and you guys are still providing overwatch and security.
Yeah, I mean, you're still breathing. You got to protect what you got left.
To the last man.
And so I'm doing these checks, staying on the radio, letting my command know what's going on, and next thing I know, I'm checking on my guys to my right, and this building was probably no more than like 6 or 7 feet wide, and so we're kind of tight, and watching my corner, watching those guys. At that point, my leg was kind of hurting, so I kind of crouched down almost in a seated position, and we hear a blast. Kind of shocks those two, and they turn around, and they're like, what the hell was that? And I said, they're throwing grenades, keep your heads down, keep watching that corner. So doing my checks again, radio, checking on my guys, checking my corner. Next thing I know, I'm turning around to check on my guys, and there's a pineapple grenade sitting right behind them. Immediately saw it as a threat. We haven't used pineapple grenades in years, knew it wasn't one of ours, and it wasn't there before, and didn't even hesitate. I looked at those guys like I looked at my kids, like my brothers, and my job as a leader to protect them. And so I reached over, I grabbed it, and as I was trying to attempt to throw it away, I opened my hand to release it. My head was down, and as I opened my hand, it exploded. I don't know how far outside of my hand it got, but I sat back up and I grabbed my arm, and the hand was completely gone at the wrist, like somebody had cut it off with a circular saw. The skin was hanging around the sides, the radius and the ulna were poking up about a half an inch. It was oozing blood, and I mean, it was dirt and debris, and you could smell the burns in the flesh, and it was pretty nasty. But what went through my mind when I looked at it was, why isn't this thing spraying into the wind like in Hollywood movies? It's just oozing. And it's kind of weird, but snap back to reality. Oh crap, I got to take care of this. Reached down, grabbed the tourniquet, was able to tie it off with my teeth and hand, and immediately checked on my two guys who, they both got minor shrapnel. They both went out on missions the next day, and they both stayed in the service for a period of time. But
And they both are alive because of you.
And they got families, went to college, and after that fact, though, checking on them, one of our first sergeants came right up to me, and he's grabbed me by my shoulder of my kit, and he said, "Come on, we're gonna get you out of here." And I pushed his arm away. I said, "You're not taking me anywhere till you get those SOBs that are still shooting at us." And he saw that I was coherent. I had already started doing self-aid, and the best thing he could do was stop the volume of fire and the enemy contact. So he said, "We'll be back and for you," and he ran in a different direction. I think he was going to attempt to flank him. But for whatever reason, we got another lull in fire. I don't know if they ran low on ammo or what, but I was able to grab onto another guy, and we ran out of there till we got to our medics and our casualty collection point. And as I'm looking around, there's blood and guys getting treated here and there. And one of our medics runs up to me and he goes, "Sergeant Petry, we need to treat you." And I said, "I'm good. I already got a tourniquet. I already stopped the bleeding. Help those guys." And he says, "Well, we got to take a look at your legs." And that was really the first time I looked down. I thought I was only shot in the left leg. I thought the bullet stuck in the bone, and I was like, if I can make it out of here, hopefully they could dig it out and make a cool necklace or something. And when I sat down, when I looked down, my pants were soaked in blood all the way to my boots on both legs. And mentally, I wanted to stay in the fight. I always said that even if I used my last breath to give a radio transmission that would help my guys. That's what I wanted to do. But I knew physically that I was running out of juice. And so as I sat down and I cut off my pant legs, we realized that I had gunshot wounds to both my upper thighs. And they started putting tourniquets on it, put me in this litter.
And what's amazing is that happened before the grenade.
Yeah. It was because of the adrenaline and everything, I never felt any pain. Also, I tell people a lot of it's mental. You don't realize it till you focus on it. And my focus was on my guys, and as they put me in the litter and they're prepping us for a medevac, as the guys are carrying me out and we're going up this little hill, I could see guys on the rooftops pulling security and stuff. And I remember one of the guys running up to me, and he's coming up and he's like, "Hey, you're gonna be all right. We're gonna get those guys." And I'm pushing away with my one good arm, and I'm like, "Get away from me! Go pull security." And my fear was he was gonna get shot coming to comfort me, or worse, I'm gonna get shot in this litter where I can't defend myself.
And even at that time, you were still focused on the mission.
It was.
Taking care of your guys.
You're not safe until you get home. And I said, even home isn't that safe anymore nowadays. But even as we're loading up on the Chinook on the ramp, Sergeant Higgins, the guy that was next to me, he's crouched down. He's like, "You saved us. You saved us." I said, "Great, get on the damn bird." Because that's a big target out in the daylight, and that was my concern, was the safety. And next thing I know, we're flying that back to the FOB that we were at, Sharana, the dirt airfield, and Chinook lands. They unload us all on the side of this airfield, and then Chinook takes back off to go support the mission. And I was grateful we had a couple of PAs in our unit, and they were there and they were working on me and the other guys. And I'm laying there and I hear them talking, and they're saying, "Fixed wings 30 minutes out for the bird to come in." And I'm thinking to myself, great, I'm gonna die here on the side of this dirt airfield. You should have just left me out there, do what I can. And one of the PAs hands me a couple of fentanyl pops, and I'd never seen a fentanyl pop. I mean, we'd joke with the medics all the time, "Hey doc, give me a fentanyl pop." And they're these, I don't know if you've ever seen them.
One shots, right?
They're little sticks.
Yeah.
No, that's morphine.
Okay.
But they're sticks, and it's plastic about halfway, and then they look like the old dip-in sticks that you dip in the Kool-Aid and stuff. It's almost like a candy thing. And he hands it to me. He goes, "Here, take these." I didn't know what to do, so I bit off the ends and I threw the plastic pieces to the side. And next thing I know, he turns around and he's like, "Hey, what'd you do with those fentanyl pops I gave you?" I said, "I already chewed them up. I threw the sticks over there." And he smacks me in the head. And he goes, "You idiot, you're supposed to suck on them or else you don't get the medicine. It's in the bottom." I was like, "Well, it helps if you would have told me." And so he gives me a couple more, and I stayed conscious. And the bird got there. They loaded me up on the bird. Probably stayed conscious for about another 30 minutes on flight, and then they heavily sedated me. And I woke up in Germany. Waking up in Germany, the next day, I was in a room, and I remember I was a little bit groggy at first, and I saw a nurse by the doorway, and she's like, "Oh, you're awake? How are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I said, "I'm okay." And she said, "Can I get you anything?" And it's strange, but this is what went through my mind. I said, "Yeah, can you give me a razor and some shaving cream?" She kind of does this double take. I'm like, "Sir, what was that?" I said, "Can you give me a razor and some shaving cream?" And in my mind, I was thinking about the Ranger standards, the Blue Book. And in the Blue Book at that time, Rangers will shave every day to include weekends, holidays, blah, blah, blah. I was more worried about one of my guys coming in and seeing me unshaven, or worse, somebody not from my unit coming in and seeing me unshaven, and as I'm representing them. Nobody really said anything in the condition I was in, but that discipline that was ingrained to me when I was young, that's what I was worried about, not myself. And shortly thereafter, I got to call home. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with anybody, but I met my grandfather's cousin, or niece, when I was really young, like 13. Only one time she came over from Germany, and I didn't even barely remember her, but when I woke up there, and that was one of the visitors I got, she still lived there, and miraculously, Facebook and everything else, word got back, and she knew I was there, so she came out to see me, and it was nice to see some familiar face, but I got to call my wife, and it was Memorial Day back home at this time, and my mother-in-law would come in sometimes to help with the kids, and it was early in the morning. They were in their nightgowns having coffee, and they got the knock at the door. And if your next of kin lives in the immediate area, they'll try to send somebody to the door to notify them from your unit, from people that are in rear detachment. And I'd known the process, so I knew they would come in a dress uniform if you were killed in action, and they come in the fatigues if you're wounded in action. Well, my wife went to the door and she looked through the people, and she didn't even look at the uniform. All she saw was a tan beret. She backed away from the door and she said, "Mom, send the kids upstairs. You're gonna have to get the door."
Oh.
And she said it was her worst day of her life. I joked with her. And I showed her my prosthetic arm, and I said, "Honey, it wasn't my best day either." And I mean, now you can look back on it, but I know how hard it must have been on her. So when I got to call her, I'm thinking about that process and her reactions and concern. And I called her, and the phone rings. She answers, and I said, "Honey, it's me. I'm in Germany." I said, "I got shot through both my upper thighs, and I lost my hand right about the wrist on my right side." She said, "It's quiet." And so I'm thinking of, how am I going to let her know I'm doing okay and I'm in good spirits? And then finally I was like, "All right, I got it." And I said, "The good news is the junk's still there." And at that point, she started talking, and she opened up, and
Then she knew you were okay.
she realized I was okay if I was making jokes. And miraculously, the transportation, I spent that night in Germany. The next day, I was transferred to Andrews Air Force Base, spent the night there, and then the next day I was transferred, I think it was from the point of injury back to San Antonio. It was 4 days.
Wow, that's unheard of. That's tremendous.
Something that I'd never seen before and was a little strange to me was the transportation from Germany back to Andrews Air Force Base. In the U.S., they have these, I think, C-17s, and in the back of the C-17, there's a bunch of bunk bed looking things, and literally, you got like maybe 6 inches, 8 inches between your bunk and the bunk on top of you.
It's like being on a Navy ship.
And I didn't know at the time, but I'm looking around as I woke up, and they have medical personnel in there checking on all the patients every now and then, monitoring them. And I see this guy across the plane from me in his bunk, and he's got this container-looking thing, plastic-looking container thing with like smoke coming out of it. Defibrillator. Is it? No, not defibrillator. It's a thing they use for the breathing.
Yeah, like a respirator almost.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, oh Jesus, they put me on the bird that everybody's expecting to die. And I didn't realize at that time, all the meds and stuff, you start having weird thoughts. But I got to San Antonio, and my family hadn't flown in yet to see me, and this young girl comes, first person to come visit me in the hospital. She had lost both of her arms above the elbow. And I'm thinking to myself in my mind, I got it easy. As bad as it seems, here's this young girl missing both her arms, and knowing as much as women do to primp and pretty themselves, and hygiene and feeding, everything, she's going to be reliant on somebody to help her. And I said, I'm lucky I got one arm. Never did I think I'd get a prosthetic like I have. Even that day when I got injured, I thought if I made it out of there, I was going to get a hook, which I was fine with. I actually do have a hook, and I was a pirate my first Halloween home with the kids. And I had the real equipment, so, but then they gave me this prosthetic hand that it's almost like the real thing. And multiple different attachments. The hand comes off, a full set of cutlery knives for the kitchen, open-end wrenches, I have a pizza cutter, you name it.
You tell me you can put a knife on the end of this?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I went to the VA after I got out, and prosthetic appointment, and they were like, hey, is there anything you need? And I said, I love to cook, and when I use my kitchen knives attachments, I can't really feel the pressure on the vegetables. And I said, I lose half the vegetable. I said, is there any way to get a potato pillar? And they're like, yeah, I think we'll see what we can do. A week later, I get this little box in the mail, and inside a potato pillar attachment.
That's
and I got excited. It's kind of crazy, but it's the little things that make your life easier.
Yeah. Well, last question here. How would you say this experience has changed your life? And I got to tell everybody, our listeners, how grateful we are here at OPFOB that you're willing to kick off this event for 22 nights of bringing awareness to veteran suicide. And you do a lot of different things for a lot of organizations. But is there one kind of thing you think that's really changed you since going through this incredible crucible?
No, I don't think so. That was the one thing, even when it was just a recommendation, that I told myself is I wasn't going to let it change who I am. This award, if it went through, I was going to use it as a platform to help others. If it didn't go through, then I still had the job I loved I was doing, and I would continue to serve in some type of capacity and help others. And the one thing that I tell folks is that we're all going to face adversity of some sort in our life. And I said, you think you're having a bad day, there's always somebody out there that has it worse than you. And through suffering comes wisdom. And I get asked quite a bit by folks that are going to Ranger School, hey, I'm going to Ranger School, do you have any advice? And I tell them, yeah, look to your left and to your right. I said, you're always going to find somebody that's sucking worse than you are. I said, it's on those days you go pick them up. I said, because I guarantee you, at least during one day while you're in that school, someone's going to be looking at you as they're left or right and go, wow, they're sucking, in hopes that they come and they pick you up when you need it.
That's right. Well, you picked all of us up, me specifically. This has been just an incredible opportunity to get a chance to hear your story, but more importantly, share my friendship, appreciation, and camaraderie with you. We finish up each one of these episodes with a dedication to one of our fallen warriors. Is there anybody you'd like to dedicate this episode to?
We lost one of our guys that day, Specialist Christopher Gaither-Cole, and all of us, his nickname, we called him Gator, and stay in contact with his family. And I look at him and the loss that his family suffered, and I think every day when I wake up and I breathe air into my lungs and I open my eyes, how grateful I am to have the opportunity to still be here and make a difference. So as hard it is on other people that have lost someone, I'm grateful that they were here for the time that they were and did what they did so that we could enjoy what we have.
Well, with that, we'll dedicate this to Gator and finish this episode as we always do with Semper Fidelis.
Rangers lead the way.